Hi everyone. Welcome today. I'm sharing an exciting story with you. What if Naruto turned into curious girl after gain powers? It's full of action, emotions, and surprises. Let's jump into it. An 8-year-old, blonde-haired, blue-eyed Naruto was always curious and she liked to explore new areas, and she managed to find an unused building that she never seen before, and it looked like it hasn't been used in years, and it looked like something you would find in an old horror movie setting. "This is great," Naruto exclaimed. "Maybe I could find some lost treasure or something that was left behind." Naruto went to the front door and she slid it open, and it was extremely dusty and had old cobwebs hanging everywhere in there, and it appeared to be as worn down as the outside. "Woo," Naruto said in shock, "this place really needs to be cleaned up." Naruto walked inside. The floorboards squeaked as she walked across them. As she continued to explore, she heard some cracking sounds beneath here, and she looked down and she noticed spider web cracks appeared below her feet, and she paled as she knew what this meant, and before she could do anything the floor gave way and she fell into the basement. After she managed to get up after her fall, she looked around and saw many experiments like you would see in a mad scientist's laboratory. As she looked around, she noticed a picture of a paled-faced ninja and a kunoichi a couple years older than her, and she recognized as Anko, because she saw some of the villagers and shinobi attack her be sent to her, and she knows that she is Ibiki's right-hand girl and second in command of the T&I department. She then put down the picture and decided to explore some more, and she found a tube, and it was filled with some sort of green liquid and it had a giant ball of something in it, and as she took a closer look, the ball opened, revealing it to be a giant eye. This caused Naruto to jump back in fear, and she accidentally knocked the table behind her, causing a test tube to fall, and it fell and the glass broke into 1,000 pieces, and it some a purplish chemical in it, and it formed into gas of the same color, which Naruto accidentally breathed in some, and she went. The next thing she knew, the world went black. Beep beep beep. Naruto woke up and she realized she was in the hospital, and a nurse happened to be in the checking her temperature, and she said, "Good, you're awake." "How long I was out?" Naruto asked. 3 days, and you were lucky some Anbu were checking out that house you were exploring," the nurse said. 3 days, Naruto shouted. The nurse shook her head in agreement. Naruto groaned and she closed her eyes and she heard the nurse gasp. Naruto opened her eyes again, but this time the ceiling, yes the ceiling, and was a few inches from her face. In fright she screamed and looked around. She noticed that she was covered in some sort of yellow chakra. Some of the other nurses and doctors heard the scream and came running into the room, and they were gaping at Naruto as she was floating near the ceiling, clearly panicking, not knowing what to do. An hour later, she was still floating besides all the doctor's best efforts. Just then the Hokage entered the room and looked at Naruto and told her, "Calm down, I'm sure if you do that you manage to get down." Naruto nodded her head in agreement. She was near tears. As she calmed down, she gently came back down and landed on her hospital bed. Over the next month they were testing her new abilities. And the doctors managed to determine it's a new bloodline, even though it was extremely difficult to draw blood since her skin was now harder than most metals. They managed to draw blood when one of the ninja with a kunai made up of adamantium. Why, no one knew. All anyone knew was he was extremely paranoid and somewhat crazy, believing he was in some sort of a flashback character in some story, and liked to dress up from head to toe in red and black. Besides his semi-craziness, he is considered one of the best assassins, bodyguards this village has. The cut closed up within seconds without the doctors doing anything, but enough blood came out for them to test. Naruto could fly just under the speed of sound, increased strength, able to lift 5 tons, ability to resist most attacks, ability to absorb pure chakra and other forms of energy, reflexes and agility that was off the charts, invulnerability, and of course energy projection. Of course, everyone there believed that her current abilities will continue to develop, and the possibility of getting new abilities as she got older. Time skip 8 years 3 weeks before graduation of the rest of the Konoha 12. It's been 8 years since Naruto had that accident and gained the Marvel bloodline. She was on a mission with her teammates, the torture and interrogations expert Anko and the Genjutsu mistress Kurenai, and her, Naruto aka Ms. Marvel, the powerhouse and team leader, and together they're called Team Vixen. Their mission is to find Tsunade. "Are you sure this where she is?" Anko asked, complained in her normal childlike behavior. "That's what her information says she is," Naruto said. She was currently wearing an orange V-strapped shirt that showed her huge assets and ends just above her belly button, with a lightning bolt running down the middle, and skin-tight pants, and was wearing her Konoha symbol as a belt. Her blonde hair stops at her mid-back. "Remind me why we are a team again," Kurenai said. "Because I made Junin at age 12 and needed a team, and the Hokage didn't trust many of his shinobi, because of my tenant, and he has reason to believe that some of his shinobi reports to the council instead of him," Naruto responded. "Oh, that's right, Kurenai said, remembering some incidents. Is that how Kakashi lose his position as Anbu captain and got kicked down to special Junin because he tried to steal some of your secrets? Anko lost it and started laughing like a mad woman and said between fits of laughter, I remember that incident. Unbeknownst to him, you got back from a mission out of the village and you managed to catch him in your apartment and you hanged him up as a piñata blindfolded and gauged with a sign that said pervert on him over the girls' side of the hot springs. Naruto shrugged and said, I don't like thieves and he often sat by while mobs attacked me and that's the best revenge I could come up with. Normally I don't condone revenge, but considering the history between you two I don't blame you for trying to beat some sense into him, Kurenai said. Sometimes that's the best way for a guy to learn, Naruto said as she smiled evilly, and that caused Anko to go into another fit of laughter and Kurenai shrugged because she had nothing to say back. Speaking of guys, I've heard the council tried to get you into an arranged marriage with the last loyal Uchiha again, Anko said. How many times have they tried to get you to get married? Don't know, Naruto said. I lost count after the 983rd attempt. 1264, Kurenai said without thinking, and her two teammates gave her funny looks. Would I want to know how many times before they actually learn that you don't find anything about him appealing? If you ask me, Sasuke is gay. No straight guy has that many fangirls without going out on at least one date. Anko started laughing again and Naruto gave her a half smile and said, now that you mention it I think you're right. Kurenai smiled at the comment and asked, now, how do we find Tsunade? Either a place where you can gamble or a bar, Naruto stated, or at least that was what the old pervert told me how to find his old teammate after I knocked it out of him after he tried to peep on me at the bathhouse. Oh, Anko said in a childlike glee, that's why he's in the hospital and why he didn't join us. Then Anko smirked and asked, did you knock his balls off? Anko. Kurenai shouted at her friend's comment and Anko just stuck out her tongue at her. They walked into a bar and immediately noticed a blonde woman in her 20s drinking some shake with a black hair kimono wearing companion holding a pig. Tsunade, Naruto shouted, and the blonde-haired woman stopped drinking and looked at the person who shouted her name. The trio walked up to Tsunade and Naruto said, your old sensei has ordered you to report back to the village, Tsunade. Tsunade had a disgusted look on face and said, what if I don't want to go back? What if I told you that your old sensei has found out that your fiancé and younger brother wasn't killed in a battle but was betrayed and killed? Naruto asked back. Tsunade's look got serious. I would say you're joking, but my old sensei knows better than to bring that up. I would ask who? Your snake in the grass teammate, Naruto answered. Tsunade's eyes widened at that and asked, how do you know this? We've found an old journal of his, and he gloated how his plan to point those ninja to their location and how he will win your heart by swooping in and comforting you in your time of need, Anko said. We now know that he hired a hit on you and preferably brought back to his village back alive, Kurenai said, opening a bingo book to the page with her picture on it with a bounty of 30 million Ryo alive and 5 million dead to the Sound Village. The sad part is that they have no value for Shizune and Taunton here, Anko said, opening up her bingo book with them listed as 25 million dead, each. Shizune gasped, and Tsunade grew a tick mark on her forehead, and said, when I get my hand on that bastard I'll make him wish that he was never born. That's why your sensei is calling you and Shizune back, so he can keep an eye on you all and make sure that ex-teammate of yours doesn't escape punishment, Naruto said with a mischievous grin, and to make sure nothing happened to Shizune and Taunton here, and your sensei knows you can take care of yourself but he knows you can't keep an eye on these two 24/7. Tsunade's eyes narrowed and said, that's a low blow, kid. It's still the truth no matter how much you don't want to admit it, Naruto quipped back. Tsunade let out a sigh of defeat and Naruto raised her hand to form the V sign in victory as she let out her foxy grin. An hour later they were heading back to Konoha, and Tsunade asked, I have a couple of questions. What are they? Kurenai asked. My first question is that have they put my plans into putting medic nins into each squad like I originally proposed, Tsunade asked. Kurenai responded, that is one thing I wish they do. It'll cut down on fatalities and early retirements of nins on the field. Okay. Tsunade said in disappointment. My second question, who is considered the strongest kunoichi since I left? That's an easy one, Anko said. It is young Naruto here, she finished in a sing-song voice. They say she's as strong as you without using any chakra to enhance her punches. That can't be true. Shizune stuttered out since she can't imagine anyone being as strong as Tsunade without using chakra. Believe me, that would be the case if her bloodline doesn't enhance her natural abilities, Kurenai said. By this time Naruto was blushing in embarrassment from the praises. What does her bloodline do? Tsunade said, intrigued. So far, we haven't found a way to make her bleed yet. Her strength easily rivals yours. Her speed has increased so much she can easily break the sound barrier, shoot energy beams, which aren't jutsu, absorb pure energy, enhanced agility, the ability to fly, Kurenai explained. Wait, fly. Tsunade stopped walking in shock. Yep, Naruto said and levitated a few feet off the ground and glided a few yards, before landing back on the ground, to prove the point. How about fangirls? Shizune asked. Team Vixen groaned and Tsunade said, that bad. Except for one, the Hyuga heiress, they're all fangirls, Naruto responded, rubbing the bridge in between her nose. They're all fawning over the last Uchiha. They give Kunoichi like us a bad name, Kurenai said, hanging her head. If I had my way, all the fangirls get kicked out, Anko said, either that or spend time in the T&I department. It's been 2 weeks since they brought Tsunade back to the village and the Hokage is currently nursing a headache that was caused by the council, again. Ever since the Uchiha massacre and Naruto developed the new bloodline, they've been trying to exploit every loophole they can find to get Naruto to marry Sasuke, and thankfully Naruto is a shinobi, which doesn't fall under their jurisdiction as a civilian. You wanted to see me, old man? A voice from the window said. When are you going to start using the door, Naruto? Sarutobi asked without looking at the owner of the voice. That's what they're there for. Last time I was ambushed by at least a couple dozen civilians from this village, Naruto said. Touché, Sarutobi responded. I wanted to see you because graduation is next week and I want you and your team to take on a couple extra students that we have left over. Well, who are they? Naruto asked, and Sarutobi slid a folder towards her and she looked at the two candidates. All hell no. Why not? Sarutobi said knowingly. For starters, the Haruno is nothing more than a fangirl. Naruto said. And the Uchiha, in my opinion, he should be put in the Fisk ward, according to his physiology report. And I have to put up the BS from the council for trying to arrange a marriage contract between us. You have a good points, the old Hokage said. Do you really want me to train them? Naruto asked. Do you want me to answer that? The Hokage replied back. Naruto sighed in frustration and said, I'll have your answer by tomorrow. Sarutobi nodded. Scene change. Team Vixen's apartment. Naruto entered the apartment through the window. Hello Naru, what did the Hokage want? Anko said and ate a dango. He wanted me to train a team, Naruto replied back, disheartened. Don't be like that, Kurenai said, trying to reassure her. I'm taking my own team. At least you get to choose them, Naruto said, throwing the folder on the dining room table, where Anko took a look. Oh, you've got to be kidding me, Anko said in rage. You get the emo with a 20-foot stick up his ass and a fangirl. Anko, Kurenai said before looking at the report, why does he want you to take these two? I got the impression he wants me to the Uchiha to get him out of the council's and Kakashi's hands and to straighten out the fangirl, Naruto replied. Well, I'm not going to work the Uchiha, Anko said, pushing the folder away from her. I've heard the stories. You shouldn't believe everything you hear, Anko, considering there are some about you, Kurenai said. What stories? Naruto asked. A childhood friend of mine was in the Uchiha clan and she told me, shortly before the massacre, that the females are treated like second-class citizens in the compound and they are expected to spread their legs for their husbands whenever they want, Anko said. My friend was talented as Itachi was, but her clan wouldn't let her graduate like he did. I hate to admit it, Kurenai said, but I don't think the Uchiha should graduate. From I can tell he's mentally scared from the massacre and all he thinks about is power and revenge. Not to mention his antisocial tendencies, and he thinks that any team he is put with will only slow him down, Anko said, adding her 2 cents in. Naruto nodded and said, I assume none of us wants to work with the Uchiha. Both Kurenai and Anko nodded in agreement. I'll tell the old man tomorrow when I turn in our mission report from our mission to the land of snow, Naruto said. Time skip. 1 week later, the graduating genin hopefuls were talking among themselves, curious who their teammates and senseis going to be. That was Iruka walked in. Well, class, he said, but the genin kept on talking. Quiet all of you. Iruka shouted, using the evil big head jutsu, causing them to shut up and sit down in their seats. Now class 1, have you team squads and senseis right here. Remember, whatever happens, I'm proud of each of you for making this far. Now for team 1, as teams 1 to 6 were called out. As for team 7, you will be paired off with a genin who graduated last year but whose fellow genin was massacred a few weeks ago. The two are Sasuke Uchiha and Sakura Haruno, and your fellow teammate is Sai. Your sensei is going to be Kakashi Hitaki. Yay, true love conquers all, Sakura shouted, take that Ino pig. What? Sasuke shouted, but the council promised me that Naruto was going to be my sensei and future wife. This caused Sakura and Ino to start fuming with jealousy at the thought of someone else being his wife. Naruto refused the request and filed a restraining order against you and any marriage contracts that comes her way involving you too, Iruka said and then muttered to himself, not that I blame her. Anyway, he continued, Team 8, I won't accept that as an answer, Sasuke said. This is not my decision, Iruka said, this was approved by the Hokage himself. Unless you would defy him and lose your shinobi license in the progress. This shut Sasuke up. As I was saying before I was rudely interrupted. Team 8 is Shino Aburame, Hinata Hyuga, and Kiba Inuzuka. Your sensei is going to be Kurenai Yuhi. How come they get a member from Team Vixen as a sensei? Sasuke interrupted again. Sit down Sasuke, Iruka said. It's still not too late to fail you. Sasuke sits down. As I said before, this is not my decision and all teams and their senseis has been approved by the Hokage, and anyone questioning this list will be removed from the program altogether because questioning this list is the same thing as insubordination. Iruka looked around and appeared that no one else had anything to say, and Sasuke was still fuming. Anyway, Team 9 is still in circulation. Team 10 is Shikamaru Nara, Shoji Akamichi, Ino Yamanaka, and your sensei is going to be Asuma Sarutobi. Meanwhile, in the Hokage's office, the Junin senseis were looking through the viewing orb at the class. How come Naruto isn't going to be teaching the Uchiha? A random Junin said. Because he's an arrogant fool who needs to learn that he can't have everything he wants, Naruto said. She was sitting in corner along with Anko, who was eating dango. How come you're here again? Said another Junin. Because my teammate is getting herself a genin team, she responded. As if, maybe an easy lay, the said Junin said before he found himself be grabbed by the throat and lifted in the air. What did you say? Naruto said angrily. Nothing, nothing, the Junin said, struggling to get out of her grasp. You better hope it was nothing, Naruto said. Naruto, no killing in this office, the Hokage said. The said Junin let a sigh of relief and the Hokage added, if you're going to kill him, do it in the hallway since I just got this office painted. The Junin started sweating bullets now and Naruto smiled evilly at him. After several seconds she let go of him, causing him to fall on his butt, and she started walking away and said, you're not worth it. The reason you didn't accept Sasuke is that you don't want him to be stronger than you, said a silver-haired Junin. Naruto looked at the Junin and replied back, at least I don't steal others people's jutsu who put hours of training into perfecting them or break into apartments of allies to steal their secrets, Kakashi. The council needs to know all of its assets, Kakashi replied. So you admit that your loyalty is to the bureaucratic advisors and not to the Hokage or the clan heads, Naruto shot back. Enough you two, the Hokage said. Naruto, you've already punished him enough by having the woman in the hot springs beat him in up. Naruto, Anko, and several other female Junin smiled at the memory, but Kakashi cringed at the memory. Good times, Anko said, as she was one of the girls in the hot springs, while taking another bite of her dango. You didn't have to summon your snakes to make a point, Kakashi said. Yes I did, Anko said in a sing-song voice, don't forget about the pervert tattoo I gave you. Kakashi cringed at the mention of the tattoo as it was a letter, P, for pervert on his private parts. Hinata couldn't believe it. She was chosen to be on the genin team of a member of the most famous team of Konoha and the only all-female one to boot. Sure, it was Kurenai who took care of her since her mother died. She along with the genin hopefuls were in the academy room and the door opened and Kurenai entered and said, Team 8 with me. Hinata got up nervously and she noticed Sasuke got up too and started walking toward her, and Kurenai said, not you Uchiha. I should be on your team, Sasuke said, if I'm not the council. The council doesn't control ninja matters duckbutt, a voice said from the window. Everyone looked and saw Naruto sitting in the windowsill eating some instant ramen, and various students were whispering, it's Ms. Marvel, and she hot, and several the guys called out some various calls. You shouldn't insult your future husband like that, Sasuke said smugly. Really, Naruto said, finishing her ramen and throwing it in the waste bin and started looking around, I don't see him in here. It's me, Sasuke said, trying to control his anger. Naruto looked sternly at him and she then broke out laughing, and after several minutes she managed to control herself. I thought you were serious there for a minute, she managed to say while wiping some tears from her right eye. Kiba, who was right by Hinata, shouted, you just got burned. The guys, minus Shino and Shikamaru, who was taking a nap, started laughing, and the fangirls were either looking sternly at Kiba or having a jealous look at Naruto for taking their precious Sasuke attention away from them. Sakura, on the other hand, walked up to Naruto and screeched, Sasuke's my future husband. She then raised her fist and then hit Naruto on the back of the head. Naruto kept on looking at Sasuke with disgust like she didn't feel anything. Sakura on the other had started jumping around using her other hand grabbing her injured hand shouting, "My hand! My hand!" The guys started laughing harder and the class's top fangirl and the most violent, getting her just desserts. "Sakura, you just assaulted a superior officer, you will go on report and you could be court-martialed," Kurenai said. She looked sternly at Sakura, who managed to stop jumping around but was crying, "Team 8, follow me please, and Sasuke, you will go to your proper team, no questions asked." Kurenai then walked out the classroom. Sakura was frightened because if she was court-martialed she wouldn't be on the same team as Sasuke. Sasuke, who smugly smiled because he believed the council would prevent his court-martial, and that was when he felt a sharp pain in his butt and he turned around and he saw Naruto's index finger pointing at him and her thumb pointing up in the air. She was also smirking. Scene change after Team 8 introduced themselves. Team 8 was currently on the roof of the academy and Hinata asked, "Are you going to court-martial those two?" "Of course not," Kurenai responded, "but they will be punished severely. They need to learn there is no room for petty squabbles on assignments and there are consequences for their actions." "What do you think their punishment is going to be?" Shino asked as he pushed up his glasses. "My guess, several months of doing nothing higher than D-ranked missions and paying a hefty sum," Kurenai responded. "What's so bad about D ranks?" Kiba asked. "Most ninja think of them as a nuisance or a quick way to get some pocket change," Kurenai responded. She then thought, the only challenging and feared, mission is the Torah, but they'll figure it out if they pass. "Now what?" Shino asked. "Meet me tomorrow at Training Ground 8 at 7 for your real genin test," Kurenai said. "I recommend that you don't any breakfast." "What do you mean real test?" Kiba asked. "We already took a test to graduate." "That test was meant to weed out those who guaranteed to fail," Naruto said, floating several feet behind Kurenai. "The real test only has a 1/3 chance of passing." "You mean that we might not become a genin team?" Hinata said nervously. "And only 2/3 chance of failure," Shino said logically. "The real test must be difficult." "How are you doing that?" Kiba asked and Akamaru yipped in agreement. Naruto smirked and responded, "Shinobis never reveals their secrets." She then flew. Kiba and Akamaru's jaws dropped. "See you tomorrow," Kurenai said as she slowly vanished into thin air and Naruto flew up and flew away real fast. "How does Naruto do that?" Kiba asked, finally recovering. Shino and Hinata were already walking down the stairs when he asked that and he noticed it. "Guys, wait up." Scene change. Team Vixen's apartment. "Any of those brats have any potential?" Anko asked at the table as she took a bite of her dango. "Anko," Kurenai scolded her friend. "What?" Anko asked. "You can't cuddle them forever and they need to grow up sometime." Kurenai lied out a sigh of defeat and Naruto responded, "The Hyuga girl is a bundle of nerves and full of self-doubt. Shino is a typical Aburame, and the Inuzuka is easily excitable." "Sounds like you've got your hands full, Kurenai," Anko said mischievously. "I was thinking about having you two helping me out," Kurenai said. "There is no way you're going to get me to help those brats out," Anko said as she took another bite of her dango. "Not even for a 500 Ryo gift card for your favorite dango place?" Kurenai asked, already knowing the answer. Anko's eyes then lit up with stars and she exclaimed, "You can count me in, Kurenai, sir." She then stood up in attention and saluted Kurenai. Naruto shook her head and said, "Predictable Anko, she'll do almost anything for dango." "What about you, miss? Give me ramen and I'll do what you ask," Anko retorted, getting over her antics. Naruto just starting walking over to the coat closet and Anko shouted, "Aren't you going to say anything?" Naruto opened the coat closet and in it was Jiraiya with a video camera and an audio recorder and anime sweat drops were coming down and he said nervously, "How did I end up here?" Then he looked at the objects in his hand and asked, "How did these get in my hands?" The three Kunoichi were pissed at Jiraiya for spying on them, again. Across town with Team 8 genin they were busy eating at a restaurant and they heard something, and Kiba asked, "Did you guys hear something?" "It sounded like someone was getting neutered," Shino stated. Hinata nodded. Back at Team Vixen's apartment, Jiraiya was laying on the floor severely beaten up and his recording devices were destroyed beyond salvaging. "He doesn't learn, does he?" Naruto asked rhetorically. "Nope, but that's more fun for me," Anko replied in her normal childlike charm. "Hey Kurenai, next time you should put him in a genjutsu where there is no women and he had a male lover," Naruto suggested. Kurenai thought for a minute and replied, "That might not be a bad idea. I might give it a test run on the next pervert I come across." "So Kurenai, what is your genin test going to be?" Anko asked anxiously. Kurenai put her finger up to her lips and said, "That's telling, and I don't want to spoil the surprise." Kurenai, Anko complained and started lightly pushing on Kurenai's shoulder. Please tell me. No, Kurenai said playfully, and she started walking away. You're not leaving until you tell me what your test is going to be, Anko said menacingly as she went to tackle Kurenai only for her to started running. You've gotta catch me first, Kurenai shouted. Oh, you're on, Anko said as she gave chase. For the next several hours Anko tried to catch Kurenai. Unsuccessfully, they went to bed. The next day at 8 o'clock Team 8 was still waiting for their sensei. Just then Kiba's stomach growled and he shouted, "Where is she? I'm starving." "I'm here," said Kurenai behind them. They turned around and saw her yawning. Finally, Kiba shouted, "What's our test?" "Your test is to capture Tora," Kurenai responded with a smirk. "You have 3 hours to catch that cat. Before I officially start the test I'll tell you that cat hates the Uchiha with a passion." Kurenai pulled out a timer out of her weapons pouch, wound it up and set it on a nearby tree stump and said, "Your test has officially started." With that the 3 genin hopefuls started looking for the cat ninja style, in different directions. With Kiba. "Don't worry boy," Kiba said to his canine partner Akamaru, "we'll catch that cat no problem." An idea struck the dog boy and he grinned. Kurenai's sensei did say that cat hates the Uchiha. Henge. Kiba then transformed into a perfect copy of Sasuke, and he then heard hissing people shouting, "My sword!" and "My cabbages!" Just then a cat with a pink ribbon in its ear appeared wearing full samurai armor, including the helmet with earholes. "Where did the cat get the armor and sword?" asked a confused Kiba. In the cat lunged and both Kiba, who was still in his henge, and Akamaru started running away from the clearly insane bloodthirsty cat. With Hinata. Not the face, not the face, Hinata heard Kiba scream in pain. That sounded like Kiba, Hinata thought to herself. With Naruto and Anko were laughing their butts off as they witnessed Kiba and Akamaru having their rear ends handed to them by a cat from a nearby rooftop. "I thought dogs were supposed to chase cats, not the other way around," Anko replied as she managed to get a hold of her laughter. And Naruto gave her a blank stare and they both cracked up again. Back with Hinata, Hinata was running across the rooftops towards Kiba's screams of pain, and when she got to where Kiba was she saw both Kiba and Akamaru was clearly beaten up to an inch of their lives in an alleyway. "What happened to you two?" asked Hinata as she raised Kiba's head so he get a good look at her. "Tora did this." Kiba managed to get out and he cringed in pain. Kurenai was right that cat clearly hates the Uchiha. "It's been nice knowing you." Kiba then started slowly close his eyes. Hinata's eyes widened in horror as she shook Kiba in full-on panic mode. "Kiba, don't die!" she screamed out in horror. "Kiba isn't dying, he's resting," said a stoic voice behind her, and Hinata looked behind her. In the entrance to the alleyway was Shino. Hinata took a closer look at Kiba, who had anime unconscious eyes, and Hinata blushed in embarrassment. Back with Naruto and Anko, they were both laughing harder than before at Hinata's and Kiba's interaction. Back with Hinata and Shino. "That cat sure is vicious," Shino said. The team improved a lot in the 3 months since they became a team. The biggest change was Hinata, who completely changed her wardrobe. From completely conservative and shy nature she now wore extremely revealing clothing, which consists of black tube top with orange flames coming up from the bottom, and black form-fitting shorts. Her new outfit showed off her figure that consists of DD-size breasts with a narrow waist with nicely toned abs that merely complemented her beauty, and a wide waist. She had the largest chest among the girls her age, minus Naruto, whose bust about an inch bigger than hers. Her new outfit angered the Hyuga Council and her father to no end when she stopped wearing the traditional clothing of the clan. It angered them to the point where her father even threatened to put the caged bird seal on her head, but Naruto stepped in at the last moment to prevent it. No one knows what exactly happened between those two for Naruto to convince Heishi to change his mind. All anybody knows is that he still walks with a limp afterwards and flinches whenever he sees her and or hears her nickname. Kiba didn't change much, including his brash attitude. The only thing that changed is that now he has chain link metal wrapped around his arms. As for Shino, Kurenai managed to find out that he's a natural with a sword, so they managed to get him a custom-made sword that complements his clan's style. It was a 3-foot-long sword dipped in various neurotoxins that temporarily disables an opponent if they slightly scratched, and he can have parasitic eggs on them so it'll eat the unlucky victim from the inside out if the person manages to get away. If it isn't treated fast enough, which his clan are the only clan in the Land of Fire and one of the few clans, individuals in the whole elemental nations who can successfully remove them without permanent damage. Tsunade is the only ones outside their clan in the Land of Fire to successfully do so. Kurenai and Team 8 were having a team meeting along with Anko, and Naruto was at their restaurant, which happened to be one of the ones owned by the Akamichi clan, which wasn't barbecue. "So we don't have to catch Tora again?" Kiba asked hopefully as he rubbed his face, which Tora had turned it into her personal scratching post. "Of course," Kurenai responded, "ever since Shino used that paralyzing poison on Tora, the 5th time in 2 weeks." Kurenai shoots Shino a scolding look, which he merely pushes up his sunglasses innocently. "The daimyo's wife forbid it." "Good going, Shino," Kiba shouted in glee as victory pats Shino on the back. Hinata grinned in joy. "Your order is here," the waitress said, who was in her early to mid-20s, giving the orders to their food. As Kiba gleefully started eating his food, the waitress asked, "Naruto, are they still spoiling my former cousin?" "Like you wouldn't believe, Hana," Naruto replied. "His ego is bigger than the Hokage monument." Hana snorted in amusement. "Who's your cousin?" Kiba asked with food hanging out of his mouth, which Hinata slaps him in the back of the head. "Ow. Maybe this will help you," Hana responded, and her eyes changed to a recognizable dojutsu. "The Sharingan," the 3 genin said in shock, while the food in Kiba's mouth dropped in his lap. "I thought Sasuke was the last Uchiha left in Konoha," Hinata asked, confusion. "Officially yes," Anko replied, waving off their even more confused faces. "You see, Hana here was banished from the clan and her name stricken from the official Uchiha records 10 years ago when she was 15, a year before the massacre happened when her father tried to rape her." "Why would they do that?" Shino asked in his usual stoic voice, when her father was clearly at fault. "The Uchiha clan doesn't see it that way," Hana replied. "In that clan us women are treated no better than second-class citizens with no real rights in the clan. When my former father tried to rape me behind this very restaurant, an Akamichi managed to save me, since he was a retired shinobi and the current owner of this restaurant. Since that he was a non-Uchiha member and I couldn't save myself, they completely disowned me and struck me from the records." "That's horrible," Hinata gasped in horror, since something as inconvenient as that and she was the victim here. Hana smiled and said, "Don't worry about it, I've had a better life now ever since I was kicked out of the clan, and I would probably ended up in the massacre if they hadn't." The 3 genin nodded in agreement, since it was probably true. "Anyways, enjoy your meal," Hana said as she walked off. Scene change: Mission Hall an hour later. "Naruto, Anko Team 7 needs backup," the Hokage said as the 2 kunoichis groaned in frustration. "I know you hate the majority of them, but they've ran into the Demon Brothers and I don't need to tell you who their known accomplice is." "Zabuza Momoichi," Naruto said in a serious voice. "I assume that they've waited for us and sent a message back requesting it," Anko asked hopefully, a little too hopefully. "Unfortunately no," Sarutobi responded in disappointment as Team 8 and their sensei face vaulted at the sheer as Naruto and Anko groaned in displeasure. "We've discovered them tied to a tree, after eating a cyanide pill in a fake tooth, with a note attached to them on a routine Anbu patrol." "That's just asking for trouble," Anko said, trying to prevent herself from beating her head against the wall from the sheer stupidity of it. "We could have the 3 idiots pay for an all-you-can-eat ramen and dango party once we get back," Naruto suggested with an evil smile, as punishment for forgetting standard protocol as their 3rd member is a known root agent. "True," Anko said as she smiled evilly at Naruto's suggestion, "and I like the way you think." Scene change: on the road to Wave. Anko was jumping from tree branch to tree branch on their way to catch up to Team 7 and Naruto was flying beside her. "I'm glad that the Hokage granted the punishment that we suggested, since there is dango place that just recently opened that normally is out of my price range. The way we eat, we could easily drain the Fire Daimyo's vault of all of its gold within a week, tops," Naruto said while snickering. "True, my young friend, true," Anko said as she burst out laughing as the thought of Team 7 being completely broke and homeless. Just then they saw the Team 7 genin protecting an old man who they assumed was the master bridge builder, whom they were supposed to protect. At least Sai was. Sakura passed out, most likely due to the killer intent judging by that's in the air, and Sasuke was knocked unconscious against a tree, off to the right. As for Kakashi, he was trapped in water, appeared to be a sphere of water, being held by none other than Zabuza of the Bloody Mist. Naruto looked towards her partner and she gestured to go ahead, and Naruto formed a fist and then shot one of her yellow energy beams at Zabuza, in which he managed to jump up out of the way, and Anko managed to summon multiple snakes at him, in which Zabuza managed to rotate it in midair and placed his hand on the lake they were on and managed to avoid the snakes at the cost of him of letting go of the sphere, causing it to come crashing down, freeing Kakashi. By this time both Anko was on the water too and Naruto was hovering a foot above it, and Zabuza managed to regain his footing on the water. "Ah, it's my lucky day," Zabuza said menacingly, increasing the killing intent. Naruko Uzumaki, aka Ms. Marvel, the poster girl of Konoha and ranked an S-class threat in the bingo book, and Anko the snake mistress and second in command of Konoha's T&I department, who ranks to a high A to low S-class threat in various bingo books. I was getting tired with the copycat. He didn't live up to his reputation. I'm not surprised, Naruto agreed. He's a lazy ass, and I'm sure he has been properly training since his Anbu days. Hey, Kakashi shouted at Naruto while kneeling on the lake, it's because of you that I was kicked out of Anbu. Then you shouldn't have been snooping around my place after you were warned not to come near me after you tried to sabotage some evidence preventing me from finding certain genetic experiments that Orochimaru tried to hide. Naruto shouted back while blocking Zabuza's giant sword with a hand effortlessly while she clutched it in her hand. If you three are done bickering, I want to test my might against two of the strongest kunoichi that Konoha has to offer, Zabuza said, slightly agitated from being ignored. Kakashi, Naruto, hold back, Anko said, I'll take him. No you won't, Kakashi protested, as team leader. Former team leader, Naruto interrupted, the Hokage put me in charge after your complete disregard of protocol and putting 3 freshly minted genin in danger. She then flew over to Kakashi and picked him up and flew him over to the bridge builder and threw him down beside his last standing genin. Keep an eye on him and make sure he doesn't interfere, she ordered. I'm going to check on your 2 teammates. Sai nodded in understanding. Naruto then went over to Sasuke and picked him and brought him over to as she checked his and Sakura's health as Anko's and Zabuza's fight is about to begin. With Anko and Zabuza, you're either extremely brave or extremely foolish for sending the powerhouse of your team away, Zabuza stated, no matter, as he heaved his sword so where its tip was pointing at her, covering half the distance between them. Either way, only one of us is going to walk away from this battle. Anko smirked and said, you're maybe right about Naru being the powerhouse of my team, but I'm no pushover myself. Anyway, you're right about only one of us is going to walk away from this fight, and it's going to be me, as she brought out a kunai and got into her fighting stance. Zabuza threw the hand signs and said, hidden mist jutsu. Soon the battlefield was covered with a thick fog. I didn't use this jutsu on Kakashi mostly because it took him 10 minutes for him to take down the demon brothers. I know for a fact that you went toe-to-toe with Kisame. I nearly forget about that fight, Anko quipped, isn't he the walking sushi bar? Zabuza's disembodied laugh filled the mist and responded, I haven't seen him in years. Figures, Anko muttered. On another note, did it really take Kakashi to take down those 2 C-listers? I may have been the demon of the bloody mist, but I never lie about a fight that I was never in, was Zabuza's disembodied voice responded. With Naruto. Wake up Pinky, Naruto said in a disappointed voice as she prodded the genin with her foot and got no response as she sighed in disappointment and said in a barely audible whisper, there's someone passing out signed pictures of Sasuke. Sakura shot right up with hearts in her eyes and shouted, Where? As she looked around for said pictures, but she was rewarded with a bop on the head. That was for pretending to be unconscious while you were supposed to protect the bridge builder and while your sensei was in trouble, Naruto shouted at the fangirl. So, Sakura responded while, Sasuke would have saved me. You mean this idiot? Naruto asked as she held up an unconscious Sasuke, who looked worse for wear. You bitch, Sakura screeched, what did you do to my Sasuke? Naruto huffed and shot back, he was like this when I got here, you fangirl. If you don't believe me you can ask your only real shinobi of a teammate Sai, she pointed to said genin for emphasis. Junin-sama is right, Sai said with his fake smile of his, while still not letting his guard down. Dickless provoked Zabuza when he attacked him, but Zabuza merely saw him as an annoyance than a threat, so he knocked Dickless into the tree, knocking him unconscious. Don't insult Sasuke, Sakura screeched again while she was about to hit Sai, one of Sai's ink snakes wrapped around her preventing her from moving. Naruto looked at Sai's work and said, I was right. You're one of Danzo's puppets. Sai tilted his head and asked, what gave me away? Several actually, Naruto said, rubbing the back of her head, while Kakashi was seething that one of Danzo's root was on his team. First was your chakra levels are far too high to be a mere genin. The other 2 is that fake smile of yours and your skills of yours suggest you had real combat experience. The latter stating you've been a shinobi for months if not years, but there was no record of your missions before joining this team. Sai nodded in understanding. The fog's letting up, Naruto stated. Indeed, the fog was letting up. 5 minutes earlier with Anko. Fire release. Fire dragon technique. Anko shouted her jutsu as a Western-style dragon-shaped flame shot out of her mouth in a random direction. Already busting out the A-ranked jutsus already, Zabuza's disembodied voice asked, indicating that Anko missed as she was panting in slight exhaustion. She clenched her fist around her kunai as she looked around hoping to find Zabuza. Just then Anko ducked as a giant sword swung from right to left over her head, cutting a few strands of hair in the process. Lighting release. Thunderstorm jutsu, Anko shouted as she shot the lighting at the water they were standing on. Then the fog started letting up and she could see Zabuza with multiple burn marks on his body, and she smiled at the results. Water conducts electricity. Next time make sure your opponent doesn't know any lightning jutsus at their disposal, if there is a next time. Just then 3 senban needles hit Zabuza in the neck, causing him to fall face first into the water, and then a mist hunter nin appeared next to Zabuza and picked him up by putting his right arm over her shoulders. "Thank you for your assistance," the hunter nin said. "I've been tracking Zabuza here for some time now." Anko smirked and said, "No problem, it was my pleasure. I could assist further by helping you behead Zabuza like you're supposed to do." The hunter nin then created a mirror of ice and vanished inside of it, dodging Anko's kunai that she threw. "Dang it," Anko shouted to no one. An hour after fighting Zabuza, the group has finally arrived at Tsunade's house, where they were meted by his daughter, Tsunade. Tsuna sat down at the table while Naruto and Anko laid the injured Sasuke and chakra-exhausted Kakashi in a spare bedroom, much to their displeasure. "I may not be an expert on ninja, but it seems there is bad blood between you four," Tsuna stated as Naruto and Anko sat down at the table. "Of course there is," Anko said as she smirked. "Kakashi believes that we don't deserve to be shinobi, and Sasuke thinks everything should be handed to him since his clan was wiped out by his older brother," Naruto said. "Kakashi thinks this of Anko because of her traitorous sensei and guilt by association. As for me, he blames me for his sensei's and teammates' death, even though I wasn't an hour old at the time of their deaths. I can under guilt by association, to a certain degree," Tsuna said as he added the last part, as he noticed Anko's killing intent aimed at him, but lessened when he added the last part, "but blaming the death of 2 individuals on a newborn. Crazy, I know," Naruto said. "Before you ask, Pinky here doesn't like me because there has been set forward multiple marriage contracts between me and the Uchiha, on his behalf, which I declined." Tsuna snorted and drank some of his booze as he said, "He doesn't seem like the husband material to me." Anko smirked evilly at him and said, "I didn't think you swung that way." Tsuna spat out the alcohol that he was drinking, much to Anko's amusement. "All kidding aside, why does Gato want the wave country?" Naruto asked. "You see, there's an old legend here," Tsuna said. "It is said that there is an ancient chakra metal mine filled with the precious metal left untapped, but no one has managed to find it. If someone like Gato heard the legend, then no wonder he wants the wave under his control," Anko said in her rare serious tone. "A mine of chakra metal is worth a small nation." "Precisely," Tsuna said, "but if I finish the bridge, his hold on this nation will virtually cease to exist." "No wonder you lied about the mission ranking," Naruto said thoughtfully. "We'll complete the mission, but once you've earned enough money, you'll pay us for an A rank." Tsuna started anime crying, and as he was rubbing his away the tears, he said, "Thank you very much, you don't know how much this means to me." Just then a young boy, no older than 8, appeared at the staircase and said in a depressed tone, "Why do you even try? You'll just die anyway." Naruto started cleaning one of her ears and says, "You'll die, I'll die, your mother will die, your gramps will die, we'll all die eventually, kid. It's just a matter of when and where. Gato will kill you all," the kid shouted in anger. "It's part of the job description, kid," Anko said. "You won't believe how many times someone said I'll die in the past year alone. Only my partner here has more death threats in her life than I do than my entire career." "You don't understand," the kid said. "Of course we understand," Naruto said. "You think Gato is all-powerful. Let me tell you something, kid, no one is above death. It's life's great equalizer. The rich, poor, healthy, sickly all die eventually. No exceptions. I for one won't die on this mission." Says the girl whose skin is harder than most metals and left 10 tons with an arm tied behind her back, Anko said as she tried to restrain her laughter. "You can left 10 tons, Tsuna said, amazed. "Yep," Naruto said with confidence, "it was a weird series of accidents that allowed me to do such a feat. It's the reason Prince Charming up there wants me to marry him. He believes that if we marry and have kids, we'll have truly elite Uchiha children." "He truly believes he's above the laws?" Tsuna stated. "Yep," Naruto simply answered. "No thanks to the villagers thinking his bloodline is superior, because he can copy any jutsu he sees. I can easily name a dozen bloodlines that can easily match, if not surpasses, the Sharingan." "It's what Kakashi has in his covered eye, isn't it?" Tsuna asked, and Naruto and Anko nodded. "It's not that impressive if you ask me. It was easily defeated by that Zabuza fellow." "Precisely," Naruto said. "It cannot be used effectively if one can't see their opponent. The Inuzuka's noses can smell and their ears can hear their opponent, The Hyuga's eyes can see through anything, and the Aburame with their insects are better of tracking and finding than the Sharingan ever was and ever will be. Sounds to me the young'un is just popular, Tazuna said as he drank from his bottle full of sake. Anko snorted and said, that's one way of putting it. Excuse me, Sai said with his fake smile, what is the plan? Anko shot Naruto a puppy dog look and Naruto sighed and said, fine, have your way Anko. Yippee! Anko shot up and shot ninja wire at the two genin, tying them up, you two are going to go through boot camp. Then the three of them disappeared in a puff of smoke. I hope those three a fun time, Tsunade said with a smile. Should I be worried about those two kids? Tazuna asked as he whispered to Naruto. You have no idea, Naruto replied. -10 minutes later by an inland lake. Sai and Sakura were running for their lives as Anko let loose a 30-foot garden snake on them and as she yelled, come on kitties, it's not even poisonous. That's not what we're afraid of, Sakura screeched back in fear. What did you say kitty? Anko shouted back as she set loose two more garden snakes of about the same size as the first one. Word of the wise, Sai said to his teammate, it's not smart to anger the nearly insane teacher. That is the kindest thing anyone has ever said to me Sai, Anko shouted at the two genin who were nearly 700 yards away from them. Sakura sweat dropped and whispered to herself, there's no way she could have heard us. With Kakashi and Sasuke, Naruto entered the room and the two were fast asleep and Naruto got a tick mark and she stepped on Kakashi's gut, causing him to spasm in pain. What did you do that for? Kakashi shouted out. You were asleep when Zabuza is still out there, Naruto said. That hunter nin got him, Kakashi stated in a matter-of-fact tone. Kakashi, Naruto said in a voice like she's lecturing an academy student, what is the first thing a hunter nin do after subduing a missing nin? They decapitate said missing nin, Kakashi said giving her a questioning look with his eye. Good boy Kakashi, Naruto said, and what did our hunter nin do when she subdued Zabuza? He took him, how crude he's still alive, Kakashi said as the answer dawned upon him. Ding, 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 you've won the million Ryo question, Naruto said sarcastically. Then he'll fall to the might of the elite Uchiha, Sasuke said. Looks like Prince Charming is up, Naruto said. How will Zabuza fall to the elite Uchiha when he broke 3 of your ribs, while he used a water clone, which by the way is 10% as powerful as the original? He got lucky, Sasuke said. It was more than luck genin, Naruto said. It was pure skill that Zabuza defeated you and the only reason he didn't kill you is that he didn't see you as a major threat. Then his confidence shall be his undoing, Sasuke said with a smirk. Listen Uchiha, even wounded Zabuza is still a rank threat, Naruto said, and there is his unknown partner to consider. He has a reputation of being a rather picky person when it comes to partners. So his partner is near equal in terms of skill, Kakashi said. Precisely, Naruto said with a smirk, so there is a brain in between your ears Kakashi. I owe Kurenai 20 Ryo. Kakashi's sweat dropped when he heard this. Later that night Anko dragged in a tired Sai and an exhausted pink-haired genin named Sakura. I have good news, I have bad news, and I have worse news, Naruto said to the group. The good news is Kakashi is suffering from mild chakra exhaustion and Sasuke has 3 broken ribs, so the Uchiha won't be any more use to us on this mission. The bad news is Zabuza is alive, and the worst news is that Kakashi will be with us by the end of the week. Normally Sakura would defend her beloved, but she was too exhausted to sit up from the table. How soon should we expect Zabuza attack us again? Asked a tired Sai. That's a good question, Naruto admitted, judging by the injuries he sustained and the death-like state he was put in. I'd say at least a week, if he has access to a good medic. Good think you and Anko are here, Sai said with his fake smile. Will any of Gado's men be a threat to my building crew? Tazuna asked the young Junin. Don't worry Tazuna. I have shadow clones watching over your building crew and their families so Gado's men won't be much of a threat to them, Naruto reassured her employer. Once a Konoha shinobi takes a job we won't leave a job, unless we are killed. That's a relief, Tazuna said. Dinner's ready, Tsunade said as she put their dinner plates in front of them. Sakura took one look at her plate and protested, this is not very much. Anko, who was sitting by her, bonked her in the head and scolded the pink-haired genin. Be grateful that you've received this much. They don't have much to give to begin with. Why is she ninja again? Tazuna asked. Her mother's on the council, Naruto said as she took a bite of the fish she was given, politics. The reason I chose bridge building, Tazuna mumbled, politics is the devil's game. No arguing here, Naruto said in agreement as Anko nodded in agreement too. Shut your mouths, Sakura screeched, my mother deserves respect. Naruto snorted and said, why should I respect your mother? By the age of 9 she had petitioned the Hokage 967 different times on my execution and or banishment from the village. The only reason she stopped petitioning for it is because the Hokage threatened her that he'll remove her from the council if she so much as looked at me the wrong way. Tsunade whistled in impressive tone and asked, did she really? Of course, Naruto said. The council will see to it that you're punished for telling such lies. Sakura screeched at Naruto, which earned another bonk on the head courtesy of Anko. It's no lie Haruno, Naruto said, your mother is a jealous bitch just like you. There's nothing you have to be jealous over, Sakura said. Naruto put her arms under her chest and presented them to Sakura and said, these are one reason and the other is that I'm a living reminder that she couldn't marry my father, the fourth Hokage. Peeved, Sakura said in a disbelieving tone, like your father is the fourth Hokage. We all know his wife died the same night he did as did their daughter. Did your mother tell you that? Naruto asked. Of course she did, Sakura said in a proud tone as she puffed up her chest, she's a member of the council, so why should she lie? Is that a rhetorical question? Naruto asked. Anko snickered at this as Sakura fumed with anger, the council will hear of this. The civilian or shinobi? Naruto asked. The civilian, Sakura answered. Anko was full out laughing at this point and Naruto said, I hate to burst you bubble but the civilian council has no say in shinobi matters. Of course they do, Sakura said, the shinobi side has no brains. The room got deathly quiet and Naruto broke it when she said to Anko, double, no triple Pinky's training. Sakura paled, you wouldn't? Anko gave a sinister smile and said, better rest up Pinky, the rest of the week is hell week for you. Mwahahaha. After finishing her dinner, Anko left to tuck in early as she continued to evil laugh. Sakura was pale as she couldn't imagine how bad Anko's hell week after today's session. Again, Anko shouted as the three genin were practicing tree walking by having giant snakes chase them up, non-poisonous ones. But Anko-sensei, Sakura started to complain. No breaks, Anko shouted, you've only started only 10 minutes ago. It was true, they started at 5 in the morning and it was currently 5:10 and it was still dark out. Pathetic, Sasuke scoffed at Sakura, who recently healed from his injuries. In his distraction the snake that was chasing him caught up to him and bit him in the side and he cried out in pain. Kakashi, who was dragged there by Naruto, said, must you be so hard on my genin? Yes I must, Anko said as she licked her lips sadistically, unless you want to take their place? Kakashi started sweating bullets, it's fine, everything is fine. It's trying to eat me. Sasuke yelled in pain as he tried to get free from the snake's bite. Stop struggling, you're only making it worse, Naruto yelled in a non-concerned voice. When we get back my mother is going to hear about this, Sakura threatened, complained. Is that your only threat? Naruto asked her as Sakura continued the exercise. At least Konohamaru's threats have merit, and he hasn't started the academy yet. Sigh, you can do the water walking exercise now, Anko said as she noticed that he was effortlessly going up and down the tree and dodging her snake's attacks. Yes ma'am, he said with his fake smile as he jumped down from halfway up the tree and an ink Japanese lion managed to catch him before hitting the ground and Sai went towards the lake. Your team sucks, Naruto said as she deadpanned, Sai's the exception and we both know why, so why haven't you having your other two genin keep up their basic training? It's been 3 months since graduation, they should have learned this exercise down by now. Kurenai's team learned it by the end of the 3rd week, and Asuma's by the end of the 1st month. It was on the to-do list? Kakashi offered weakly. Are you telling me or you asking me? Naruto asked threateningly. Telling, Kakashi said a little too quickly for Naruto's taste. I'm going to check on the genin with the obsession with dicks, Anko said. I'll keep an eye on these 3 wannabes, Naruto said. I'm not a wannabe shinobi, Kakashi complained. I never said you were a wannabe shinobi, you're a wannabe sensei, Naruto told the down Junin. In the 3 months Sakura hasn't learned a thing outside of the academy basics. Sasuke is a superiority complex with an ego the size of the Hokage's monument, and don't get me started on the jutsus you only taught him while ignoring your other genin. Sasuke needs to be happy, Kakashi countered. Or what, he'll defect? Naruto asked rhetorically. We've gone this long without the Uchiha's Sharingan and we can still live without it. It's not like the end of the world if he dies or defects. Quit playing around Pinky, you haven't gotten to the top yet. Sakura was screaming in absolute terror as she somehow managed to get on top of the head of the snake that was chasing her and it was trying to shake her off. Does it look like I'm having fun? She cried out in terror. Is that a trick question? Naruto asked in an I don't give a shit tone. -3 hours 36 minutes 42.86 seconds later. Congratulations you two. You've mastered the tree walking exercise, Naruto said with a smile on her face. Fuck pant you, Sasuke said, giving her an evil glare as he was nursing his snake bites and Sakura laid on her back due to exhaustion. I love you too, Naruto replied with a smile on her face, and she then smiled evilly and continued, now it's for the water walking exercise. Sasuke managed an audible gulp and Sakura was trying to hide behind Sasuke in fear of the sensei from hell. At the lake, Naruto was shooting energy bolts at the two genin as they tried to master water walking and dodge her attacks, while Sai was eating his breakfast and drinking his OJ at the lake's shore along with Anko, who was eating her dango. The student has become the master, Anko said as she watched Naruto's training method. Dickless and the boobless lack motivation, Sai said with his fake smile. Any suggestions? Anko asked. Sai thought about it for a second and got out his scroll and paintbrush and drew various animals, and they came to life and started attacking his two teammates. You shouldn't attack your teammates, Kakashi scolded his student, while lying down beside Anko's and Sai's breakfast. Sai isn't attacking them, he's motivating them, Anko countered with a childlike grin on her face. If you don't like it, I can convince the Hokage that you should pay for a danzo, ramen all you can buffet. Kakashi was anime sweeting now. Sai is motivating Sakura and Sasuke, not attacking them. Good boy, Anko said, giving him a chocolate chip cookie and placed it on his chest. Here's your reward. I wanted my book back, Kakashi whined. I'm reading it, Anko said as she took a familiar orange book and opened it as she took another bite out of her dango. Kakashi was crying anime tears about his precious being read by unholy eyes. Man up, Kakashi, or do you want to join your precious Uchiha? Naruto asked Kakashi. Kakashi visible eye widened in horror and shook his head frantically, no. Then don't complain, Naruto said with a hint of anger in her voice, we have 3 months of training to catch up in less than a week due to your laziness. You don't mean that, Kakashi complained. Of course I do, Naruto shot back, they shouldn't be on a C-rank mission with their pathetic skills. Sasuke isn't pathetic, Sakura screeched as she barely dodged one of Naruto's energy bolts, but her hair was hit and it caught on fire. Sakura frantically tried to put out her hair and she sunk into the lake to over her head. She quickly resurfaced and spat out some water. Dickless is pathetic, boobless, Sai said with that creepy fake smile of his. Sasuke does have a dick, Sakura shot back and tried to continue the exercise. Should I be concerned that she didn't deny the boobless comment? Anko asked in general, which Naruto just shrugged as she continued to fire her energy beams. 5:59 a.m. Sakura and Sasuke were asleep in their respective rooms and two different shadows appeared over them, and a loud explosion came from Sasuke's room and a shriek came from Sakura's room. Go back to sleep, Dickless, Sai said, half awake, who was sharing the same room as Sasuke and Kakashi, and went back to sleep. Get up you brat, Naruto shouted in stereotypical drill instructor's voice, it's time for boot camp. Sasuke has enough, Kakashi tried to reassure Naruto. As a Junin instructor, we're not supposed to hold their hands, we're supposed to make sure they don't die on a mission. If that means them hating us for it, then so be it, Naruto shouted as she chewed him out and put her attention back on Sasuke. What are you waiting for, genin? An open invitation? Move, move, move. Naruto was laughing like a mad woman as she encouraged Sasuke to move faster. The council will hear about this, Sasuke shouted, fretted. Have you learned nothing? Naruto asked as shot another energy bolt at Sasuke. I don't give a damn what the civilian council thinks of me. Mwahahaha. She shot various energy beams at Sasuke to encourage him to move faster. In the girls' room, Sakura was woken up by having ice-cold water dumped on her and being chased by a 14-foot constrictor, courtesy of Anko, and she just laughed as the snake chased her as she got ready for that morning's training and screaming for her life. My mother will hear of this, Sakura shrieked. I'm so scared of someone who cannot legally punish a shinobi, Anko said in mock horror before bursting out laughing as she threw a kunai at her. After the week of training, Naruto, Anko, and Team 7, minus Sai, who was chosen to watch of Tsunade's family, was at the unfinished bridge, and the mist was so thick you could cut it with a butter knife. They walked carefully as they heard no sounds of construction until a familiar scent hit Naruto and Anko, the scent of dead and decaying bodies, and they took up fighting stances, and the two genin saw this and followed, and Kakashi continued reading his orange book. Just then a shadow formed in the mist and they got ready for anything, and it was a construction worker who was badly wounded, and he collapsed as he got to Tsunade, and he caught him before he hit the ground and gently laid him down. What happened? Tsunade asked in surprise and horror. A demon hidden in the mist, the worker said before he drew his last breath. In guilt, Tsunade closed his loyal worker's eyes out of respect. A familiar voice could be heard coming from the mist. You should be proud he survived longer than the others. Naruto smiled and said in a childish voice, Why Zabuza, I didn't, you were into bondage. So you didn't get off from our last meeting? That didn't count, you caught me by surprise last time, Zabuza said a little too quickly before clearing his throat, and Naruto smiled as Anko snickered in amusement. Hand over the bridge builder and no one gets hurt. How about we give you a pink-haired banshee and a boy with a hairstyle of a duck's butt and you can go on your merely way and no one gets hurt, Naruto countered offered. While Sakura was cluelessly nodding in agreement because of the killer intent that filled the air. Tempting, but I can probably get half of what I'm being paid by selling the snot-nosed Uchiha brat to Kumo and a few Ryo for the pink-haired girl. Zabuza responded in voice that told them that he was weighing his options. Hey, but the Uchiha and the Haruno said at the same time. Both of them sounded insulted. When we get back I'm going to report you, Kakashi growled threateningly. I'm so scared, Naruto responded sarcastically. Haku, you take the brats, I'll handle the Junin, Zabuza said. Of course Lord Zabuza, a feminine-sounding voice said. Omake. At a Star Wars convention, Kiba was in a Han Solo outfit, Akamaru in a Chewbacca outfit, and he managed to catch up to Shino, who was dressed up as a Jedi Knight. Hey Shino, have you heard they're making another Star Wars trilogy? Kiba asked his friend, teammate. Yes I have, Shino said, pushing up his sunglasses. I wonder what it's going to be about, Hinata asked as she walked up in Princess Leia's slave outfit. Kiba collapsed looking at Hinata due to blood loose from his nose. I hope the storyline is better the prequel trilogy, Shino said. I liked the prequel trilogy, Sai said as he walked up dressed up as the Gungan Jar Jar Binks with his fake smile. In the background you see Shikamaru dressed up as C-3PO, Shoji as R2-D2, Sakura as Watto, Neji as Darth Vader, Ino as an Ewok, Tenten as Padme Amidala, Lee as a stormtrooper with green armor instead of white, Anko as Boba Fett, Asuma as Mace Windu, Kakashi as General Grievous, and Kurenai as Ayla Secura. Everyone has their own taste and it's better than the convention next door, Naruto walking up as an orange-skinned Torguda named Ahsoka Tano. In the convention next door they're showing the Twilight movies back to back. You see Sasuke dressed up as Bella Swan, Orochimaru as Edward, and Kabuto as Jacob. Various other villains from Naruto were dressed up as random characters from the movie. As the three Junin about to start the fight with the missing Nin and his apprentice, a 10-foot spear, with fur trimmings where the wood becomes the blade, pierced the bridge coming from Zabuza's side of the bridge. Why Zabuza, you didn't tell us you brought a friend, Anko said in a playful voice. I didn't, Zabuza replied. Craven, what are you doing here? Gato is paying me to exterminate the Marvel here, the man now known as Craven said in a Russian accent. Let me translate. She humiliated you and you want revenge, Haku translated in a deadpan voice. Why of course, Craven said with a hint of pride in his voice. Anko and Naruto snickered as they remembered the said incident and Sakura screeched, this is no laughing matter. Craven heard Sakura and asked Zabuza, you're hunting a pink-haired banshee and you didn't invite me? You can have her if you want, Zabuza replied in an unconcerned voice, I just want the bridge builder's head. Sakura heard that and fainted, still holding the kunai in a defensive position. Oi, Craven, if I remember correctly you started that fight, Naruto said in a deadpan voice, and I KO'd you in one punch. It wasn't much a fight anyway, Anko added. Flashback 4 years ago. A man of 6 feet and 235 pounds of pure muscle was kneeling on the ground, inspecting the dirt of a recent skirmish between Konoha and Iwa Shinobi, wearing leather pants and a decorative vest. -3.5 years ago the same man was standing in a recently destroyed bandit camp and not a single soul was in sight, and the local said, you've just missed her, Craven, which earned him a growl of anger. -3 years ago Craven watched as his prey fly away carrying several hundred pounds of various supplies. -2 years ago Naruto was at a bar near the border between Iwa and Konoha and she was passed out and Craven walked into the bar. He looked around and saw people drinking, playing cards, and a man playing a piano. I've came seeking the marvel for the glorious hunt, he said in a Russian accent. The other patrons pointed at an unconscious Naruto without a second thought and continued to do what they were doing. Finally, I've spent months tracking you down, Marvel, the Craven said as he walked towards Naruto, and as he got to her and he raised his spear and shouted, you may have eluded me up till now, but now I shall have your head above my fireplace. At that exact moment Naruto woke up and started stretching, and doing so Naruto raised her left arm behind her head, hitting Craven in the head, causing him to fall to the ground unconscious. Naruto looked at the now unconscious Craven and she merely shrugged as she paid her bill and left. End flashback. Anko started laughing hysterically when Naruto said it out loud. Sasuke. HNND, and said, "A weakling such as yourself should be honored to be in the presence of an Uchiha." "You must be Itachi's brother," Craven stated. "Don't you dare mention his name in front of me." Sasuke yelled into the mist and did some hand signs, "Great Fireball Jutsu." A giant fireball came out of the Uchiha's mouth and hit nothing. "I've seen rabbits with more oomph," Craven stated with a bored tone. Lord Gay Emo cough. Sasuke cough fumed at this. "Sasuke, protect the client," Anko ordered. "I don't take orders from whores." Sasuke shot back and charged into the mist. Naruto sighed and she heard the pink-haired banshee cry out, "Sasuke, wait for me." The pink-haired genin chased after Sasuke like the fangirl she was. "Okay Sai, Kakashi, protect the client while we save your team," Anko ordered. "Some team," Naruto said to Kakashi in a deadpan tone. She then threw on the mist, and Anko summoned her snakes through her sleeves. With Sasuke found the fake hunter Nin, and Sasuke smirked and said arrogantly, "At last someone I can test my superior skills on." Haku said nothing as he held up his senbons. Sasuke went through hand signs and he shouted, "Fire style. Uchiha Dragon Hell." Fire like dragon shot out of Sasuke's mouth with intense heat, and Haku held up a hand sign and moisture from the mist formed an ice mirror, and Haku said with a somewhat bored tone, "Ice mirror." The Uchiha's jutsu hit the mirror and Sasuke smirked as his jutsu caused an explosion, and when it upsided the last Uchiha fumed. The mirror was still there without a scratch and the fake hunter Nin still stood there. "Is that all?" Haku asked in a bored tone. "I didn't feel the heat." "You bitch should be proud to face a man like me," Sasuke said. "I'm a boy," Haku replied in a bored tone, which caused to HMMPH in a disbelieving tone, and Haku threw dozens of senbon at the boy, which caused Sasuke to pull out a kunai to block the senbon, and he only managed to block a few of them and the rest hit their mark, causing Sasuke to look like a pen cushion. Sasuke, the pink-haired fangirl, to cry out in fear, "Don't worry, I'll save you." Sakura picked the object of her obsession by the collar and started shaking him frantically, which caused Haku to sweat drop. "Is she really a ninja?" Haku thought in confusion. With Anko used her snakes to find her opponent, Zabuza. "Okay Mr. No Eyebrows, are you ready for round 2? Anko asked with a hint of bloodlust in her voice. "I've been looking forward for this," Zabuza said, pointing his giant blade at Anko. "I love to conquer you." "Why Zabuza, I'm flattered," Anko said with a seductive voice. With that their fight got on their way, with Zabuza swinging his sword at Anko, and she blocked the blow with her kunai she had made specially, a mixture of vibranium and adamantium, and Anko used her free hand to summon her snakes, which caused Zabuza to jump back to avoid being bitten. "They're just garden snakes," Anko exclaimed in a mocking tone. Zabuza regained his footing and they continued to exchange blows with their respective blade, neither gaining the upper hand. With Naruto was hovering a few meters off the ground in a staring contest with Craven. "I'll have your head on my wall," Craven shouted at his opponent. "I thought you want my pelt as a rug?" Naruto asked. "You'll be my greatest prize," Craven shouted as he threw his spear, and Naruto easily caught it and she broke it half, and Craven brought out his hidden net and threw it at Naruto as she caught Craven's spear and threw it, and it caught her, and he pulled the rope that was connected to the net and Naruto flew up, dragging Craven with her, both of them hearing a cry of, "Sasuke." Kakashi heard Sakura's cry and was about to go protect his prized genin, but was stopped by Sai. "Tsunade is their prize. Don't let Dickless compromise our mission." Kakashi backslapped his genin. "The council ordered me to protect the Uchiha, and I'm your sensei, so back off. The Hokage and Danzo both ordered me to keep an eye on both of you," Sai replied as he recovered from the slap. "They ordered me not to compromise the mission for Dickless Wonder." This caused Kakashi to punch Sai in the gut, causing him fall to the ground unconscious. "Anko. Sounds like Haku finished off the Uchiha," Zabuza said as his fight with Anko had reached a stalemate. "Ma," Anko said in an unconcerned voice, "he's overrated." "Most bloodliners are," Zabuza agreed. "They forget that years of training and conditioning their bodies make them the perfect shinobi, not their bloodlines," Anko added. With that said, they continued with their fun by trying to seriously maim or kill their opponent. "Kakashi, Chidori!" Kakashi shouted as he tried to kill the fake hunter Nin but missed, and he quickly realized he and two of his genin were trapped in a dome of ice. How precious, Haku's voice said, coming from everywhere at once in Haku's reflection, in full hunter nin gear, appearing in each of them. The sensei tries to save his prized genin but falls by my hand. With that the senban came from all directions and Kakashi tries to protect his genin, but mostly Uchiha, and to a lesser extent Sakura who was giving Sasuke CPR, or as her trying to wake up her Prince Charming with a kiss. No POV. Tsunade sigh as the mist started to clear. He saw that Anko and Zabuza still exchanging blows and the craven fellow supporting heavy injuries, and unconscious, along with Sasuke and Kakashi, and Sakura uninjured and appeared to be giving Sasuke CPR, and he noticed a large mob sporting various weapons, with a midget holding a cane appeared from the MSIT. Well, what do we have here? The midget said. Zabuza and Anko stopped their fight and Haku redirected his attention to the midget and Naruto and dropped the unconscious body of Craven onto the bridge, and Zabuza asked, Gato, what are you doing here? Making sure my money is well spent, Gato replied, and here I am to clean up the mess the famed demon of the mist created. You were never going to pay us, were you? Zabuza stated more than asked. Gato's evil grin answered the question. Looks like we're no longer enemies. Ah, and we were just getting to the fun part, Anko complained childishly. We can finish after we clean up our little problem, Zabuza replied, causing Anko to smirk mischievously. I'll take the 50 on the right, you take the 50 on the left, Anko suggested with a bloodthirsty smirk. Sounds good to me, Zabuza said, and both of them charged into the mob of hired bandits, and Naruto was laughing senseless as she ate popcorn. Where she got them from Tsunade didn't know. It quickly turned into a bloodbath as the two bloodthirsty Junin quickly dispatched the thugs, leaving Gato alone cowering by the bridge's end. How do we finish him off, snake or blade? Zabuza asked. Old maid, Naruto answered, and Anko smirked at the answer, causing Zabuza and Haku to tilt their heads in confusion. The next day the citizens of the Wave Country was full on party mode, stuffing themselves silly with booze and food. They managed to raid from Gato's former mansion as Gato was forced to wear a French-made costume and serve the citizens that he once oppressed with an iron fist with the food he so greedily hoarded for himself. I'm going to report you to the Hokage, Kakashi threatened. This caused Naruto to stop eating the ramen she managed to liberate and said, Report what? For me in doing your job, or you disobeyed a direct order from a superior. The council will hear of this, Kakashi threatened. Ooh, the council, Naruto said in mock horror. I'm so scared. They have no real power over me, or have you forgotten that the Hokage is the only person to punish his shinobi force, not the council? They are the future of the village, Kakashi said. Do you want me to destroy your precious Icha books, again? Naruto asked threateningly. Not my precious, Kakashi hissed. This caused Naruto to smirk as she held up a familiar orange book which Kakashi recognized, and Kakashi patted himself down looking for the book, which he didn't find, which him to watch in horror as Naruto burned it to a crisp, laughing evilly. Omake. Twilight Convention. Sasuke, still in his Bella costume, came out of the restroom in the Twilight Convention wiping his hands with a paper towel, and he saw a flash of pink and was tackled to the ground. When Sasuke regained his bearings, he was lying on the floor with Sakura on top of him and wearing a Team Ed t-shirt and was hugging him. Sakura, what are you doing here? Sasuke said in a disgruntled voice, trying to push Sakura off of him. When I heard you were here I came as fast as I can, Sakura said, still clinging to him with all of her might. Get off, Sasuke demanded in his typical Uchiha fashion, which Sakura did with hearts floating above her head, and she was still on her knees when Sasuke got up, straightened his wig, and brushed himself off as he walked calmly off. Sasuke, wait, Sakura yelled as he chased after him as hearts formed in her eyes. In Konoha everything was going the same way as usual. Team 8 was on a mission. Dog Boy and Puppy are in position, Kiba said over the radio while hiding behind a tree in his clan compound. Beauty Queen is in position, Hinata said over hers. She was hiding on the roof of one of the buildings. Buggy is in position, Shino said over his, hiding in a doorway. Do you have eye on the target? Kurenai said over hers. He's heading to Buggy, Hinata replied. I see him, he's 20 feet away and closing from Bug Boy, Kiba said over his. Now Shino, Hinata shouted over hers. Bugs then swarmed over an object and Kiba then appeared and reached in and grabbed the said object, revealing a struggling puppy and Kiba having trouble holding onto it, and he said, Hannah will give your vaccines and you'll like it. The puppy continued to struggle even while in the vet clinic, and Hannah pulled out a small needle and injected the vaccine into the puppy while Kiba was holding it still. Finished, Hannah said as she pulled the needle of puppy. Kurenai giggled and said, this puppy puts up more of a struggle than Akira did when he tried to get into Naruto's pants. Hannah burst out laughing and said, I've heard about that. Kiba got a confused look on his face. Who balls enough to try to do that to Naruto-sensei? He's the son of a fat noble inside the Fire Lord's inner circle, Kurenai replied. Wasn't he the one with the cheesy pickup lines? Hana asked. What happened? Hinata asked, and Shino fixed his glasses. A normal person would have chalked it up as a coincidence, but Kurenai noticed that it was Shino's sign of curiosity. I was out on a routine border mission at the time, so I don't know what happened, but when I got back he was in the hospital and had become gynophobia, Kurenai replied, and Kiba's head tilted in confusion. Fear of women, Shino answered Kiba's unspoken question. The way I heard it, Akira tried to get Naruto as his personal escort back, but when they were alone he thought it was her job to do anything he asked of her. Unfortunately for him, he was thinking with his dick more than his head, Hana responded. Kiba flinched as he covered his manhood with his hands and said, I'm the first to admit that I'm the sharpest tool in the shed, but even I know that is stupid. Naruto-sensei is scary enough as it is, but making her mad. Kiba shivered at mere the thought of it. Hana laughed and continued. I heard from the Anko that the third threatened his father in front of his personal samurai about cutting off his and his son's balls if they treat his ninja that way again, and I quote, Kunoichi aren't playthings for your comfort but trained assassins, bodyguards, warriors, infiltration experts, and seductresses, not some playthings for those with deep pockets. I'm guessing the man did something stupid, Shino asked. You could say that, Hana replied. Flashback. When I'm done with the bitch who assaulted my precious son, your precious shinobi won't be able to find work again. The noble shouted in pure rage. I'd like to see you try, Sarutobi said in a calm voice as he was puffing smoke from his pipe. She is my strongest and most feared kunoichi in my village since Tsunade. The noble huffed in annoyance and said, she'll see the error of her ways like all the other women who wrong my family, as I'm of noble blood as she is a mere peasant. With that, the noble left with a mission to find Naruto to fix the wrong she had done to his family. The third Hokage sighed and said, Cat? And an Anbu with a cat mask appeared before the Hokage. I'd like you to get a squad together to make sure the noble won't push Naruto too far, and while you're at it get the hospital ready for the patient while you're at once, sir, the Anbu said as he bowed and disappeared to carry out said mission that he was given. The Hokage sighed and said to nobody in particular, I'm getting too old for this. End flashback. What happened? Kiba asked. Nothing much, Kurenai replied, a little too much. Nothing much, Hana asked, giving her fellow kunoichi a look. Naruto put a genjutsu on Tora to make the demon cat think the noble was the Uchiha brat. Kiba winced at the memory of the same cat that pawned him on his first captured Tora mission. To this day the noble still wants justice for harming him from Naruto, but there is no hard evidence against her, so all charges were dropped. What did Tora do to the guy? Kiba asked. You don't want to know, Kurenai replied. I still want to know where that cat managed to learn the Rasengan, Hana replied. The next day, Team 8's a training ground, 9:38 a.m. Kiba and Shino were having a friendly spar with each other, while trying to fix each other's weaknesses, while Kurenai was teaching Hinata some more advanced genjutsu and some medical jutsu she picked up over the years. You know, more of your clan should really practice the medical arts, Kurenai stated. I know, but according to my father and the elders, learning outside the basics of the shinobi arts goes against tradition, Hinata replied. Tradition, Kurenai said in a disappointed tone. That's your clan's greatest weakness. They're so deep in tradition that they refuse to change with times. Along with the caged bird seal, I want my clan move forward with the times, not stuck in tradition. If I become clan head, that is, Hinata explained. She may have gotten over her stuttering, but she still has self-confidence issues, mainly due to her father and the clan elders. Kurenai smiled and reassured her only female student, you'll make fine clan head someday. How your family doesn't seem to see that is beyond me. Hinata gave a shy grin at her sensei's compliment. Kiba, it's time to switch with Hinata, Kurenai said out loud as she had personal one-on-one time with each of her students to help practice their strengths and weaknesses in the arts of genjutsu that their clan doesn't teach. -3 days after the liberation of the wave, give me your power, Sasuke demanded of Naruto. She gave a WTF look and said, excuse me? I demand that you give me your power, Sasuke demanded again. I know what you said, but I want to know is what makes a recently graduated genin, like yourself, think he can order a junin? Naruto said. The council knows what is good for Konoha is to make me stronger so I can kill my brother is beneficial for Konoha, so give me your power, Sasuke explained, demanded. Anko, who was recovering from her hangover, heard Sasuke's demands and she let out her insane laugh and she looked at Sasuke's face, after calming down. Wait, you're serious? Sasuke merely glared at her and Anko burst out laughing harder. Stop laughing at Sasuke, you snake bitch, Sakura screeched. Anko held her head as the screech made her hangover worse and she glared at Sakura. Do you want to be food for my snakes? Sakura paled and shook her, no, as fast as she can. Good, now shut up. You are making my head hurt more. Here's a little lesson for you, genin. Sasuke may have the civilian council in his pocket, but they have no power over a shinobi unless it's an official mission that they hired us for, or it is an order from the Hokage or the majority order from the shinobi side, Naruto explained. As for handing my power over to you, denied. Naruto added her denial by putting the kanji word for denied on Sasuke's forehead. I'll report you to the Hokage for this, Kakashi threatened, as he wasn't at 100% from his first fight with Zabuza. Gramps won't punish me as I'm in my right, as I'm not his sensei and allowed not to teach him, as long as it doesn't put the mission in danger, Naruto explained. As we remove the threat from the bridge builder's life, we won't be seeing much fighting, except for the bandits that we missed that are still hanging around, and they are easy prey for any decent genin. Sasuke can handle them no problem, Sakura exclaimed as she was in full fangirl mode. This caused Anko to throw a kunai at Sakura, cutting a few strands off her long pink hair. She said, decent genin. You pink-haired whore. Your precious Sasuke barely ranks an average genin. You lie. Sasuke is the greatest shinobi in the entire world. Sakura shouted back, and then she realized something and she started stroking her precious hair, my hair. This caused Naruto and Anko to sweat drop at the reaction, and Naruto said, you missed. Fangirl blood taste awful, Anko explained. Shut up, a menacing voice came from the hallway and glowing intent focused on Sakura. Some of us are trying to sleep. They turned and saw Zabuza supporting himself in the doorway while at the same time rubbing his forehead with his free hand, and Anko said seductively, good morning, handsome. Mornin', Zabuza replied, still nursing his hangover. Your pet banshee woke me up and I was having a good dream. I hope I was in it, Anko replied mischievously while at the same time thrusting her bust out, making herself more appealing. Zabuza looked Anko over and said in a monotone voice, you're not my type. This ticked Anko off. What do you mean I'm not your type? I'm everyone's type. Anko leapt attacked Zabuza, which quickly degraded to schoolhouse brawl, mixed with childish insults between the two seasoned Junin. Am I the only adult here? Naruto asked, moaned. I often feel the same way, Haku said, suddenly appearing beside Naruto while sipping tea. At least I can have a decent conversation with at least one person, that's trained in the shinobi arts, that is, Naruto said. By the way, do you know where Gato is? I haven't seen him since the party started. I saw him last night, still do his community service, while wearing that ridiculous outfit that you making him wear, Haku explained. Coming from a pretty boy who wears a women's kimono, now that's something, Naruto said with a sly grin. Haku merely shrugged. With Gato, some priests that were still in the wave country, because they tend to inspire hope in people, and that was something he couldn't have in the country he was trying to take over, were trying to exorcise the evil demons that they believed as possessing the once powerful business owner while tied to a giant cross, still wearing the French-made costume, while some of the villagers were laughing at their former tormentor Misfortune. Hokage's office 2 days after returning from the wave. I allowed you take a team so you could train Sasuke, but yours and the Uchiha's behavior on your last mission is unacceptable, the third Hokage said in a stern voice. Inside the office were the 3 Junin who were on the mission to the wave, while the genin were waiting outside the office while the door was closed. After leaving wave, Zabuza and Haku went back to the Mist Country to help with the rebels, with the money that they liberated from Gato. But Kakashi tried to explain his actions but was interrupted by the Hokage. This isn't just about your attitudes on the field, the third Hokage said, interrupting the famed copy ninja. You also have the gall to lie on your reports stating that the mission success of the mission rests on the shoulders of the Uchiha. A recently graduated, average level genin defeating in head-to-head combat against a seasoned A-rank missing shinobi like Zabuza is unlikely. It would have been more believable if you had said he fought and defeated his partner. I busted you down to special Junin status because you were abusing your Sharingan by stealing secrets and jutsu from your fellow shinobi. Now your incompetence to keep your team in line, in front of a client no less, leaves me no choice but reassign Team 7 to a new Junin, the third said stentorily. You can't, Kakashi shouted in disbelief. I can and will, came the Kage's reply. If you assign them to me, I can't guarantee the Uchiha's brat of the useless fangirl's survival, came Naruto's answer, with Anko nodded in agreement. Noted, Sarutobi responded. Naruto, I'm going to temporarily reassign you to train my son and his friends while Ebisu deals with the issues of Team 7. I can live with that, Naruto replied. I'm disappointed in you, Kakashi. I know you've only have been teaching Sasuke while you have been neglecting your other 2 students, the old man said. You're now on probation period for the next 4 months and have gate duty for the 2 of those months. You can't do this to me, Kakashi shouted. I'm the only one who can teach Sasuke how to use his Sharingan. Which he hasn't awakened yet, and there are other Uchihas in the village with the Sharingan, the Cage stated in a matter-of-fact voice. Banished Uchihas, Kakashi corrected smugly. You say something, Kakashi, Sarutobi said in a tone similar to how Kakashi treats Guy when he is ranting about youth. Meanwhile, Team 19 training ground, springtime of youth, Guy shouted as his team was training. Guy-sensei? A younger version of the sensei appeared before him. I don't know who and I don't know where, but someone, somewhere has realized the importance of the springtime youth, Guy said to his young pupil. We must catch up to them by running around the village 100 times. And if we can't do that, we'll climb the Hokage mountain with one hand tied behind our backs, Rock Lee added. And if we can't do that, we'll run the entire length of the Fire Nation, GSI added. And if we can do that, we'll eat the spiciest red peppers in all the lands without water, Rock Lee said. Lee. Guy-sensei. Lee. Guy-sensei. The duo embraced in a hug while casting the most hated of genjutsu in Konoha and Meibai the whole world, the sunset of youth. Why are we fated to be with such a sensei as him? Neji asked his female teammate. I blame karma for this, Ten replied in a deadpanned voice with a twitching eye of annoyance. Back in the Hokage's office, I don't need the council dogs in my shinobi force, Kakashi. I need shinobi who'll put this village and this nation before themselves, the elderly Cage stated. Now you report to your new post, Kakashi. Kakashi reluctantly bowed before using the body flicker jutsu to report to his new post at the gate. The Hokage then reached below his desk and pulled out a scroll and handed it to Anko and ordered, I want you to deliver this to Ebisu for his reassignment. Aye sir, Anko said, before using the window to exit. Why can't anybody use the door these days? The Hokage complained. Because it's more fun this way, came Naruto's cheeky reply. Just then the door opened and the Uchiha's arrogant voice came. Where's Kakashi? I want to start training now. The pink-haired fangirl screeched, and I want to watch him train. The only, normal, genin on the team, and that's Street Ching the Team, bowed respectively to the Cage and said, sorry sir, but I couldn't stop them. It's okay Sai. The Cage knowing better to blame one of Danzo's pawns for this latest transgression of the Uchiha. He has been reassigned to gate duty for your team behavior on your last mission. And you 3 will be doing D-rank mission for the next 4 months and you won't be participating in this year's Chunin exams. You can't do that, the Banshee screeched. I can and did, Sarutobi said in a stern voice. Be careful what you say Pinky, I can execute you for insubordination for ordering our Hokage right here, right now if I wanted to, Naruto said releasing a small portion of her killing intent, which caused Sakura to soil herself almost instantly. And you call yourself a kunoichi. I am a kunoichi. Sakura screeched and punched Naruto in the back of the head in retaliation. It didn't have the intended effect on Naruto. Sakura recoiled in pain and used her uninjured hand to cradle her injured hand. You broke my hand. My mom's going to have your head for this. Oh, I'm so scared, Naruto said rhetorically. Can we send her back to the academy at least, old man? If she attacks a superior officer, unprovoked, again I'm going to have her court-martial-ed, the Hokage replied as he looked at the mess that is Team 7. Good enough. Before this gets even more ridiculous, I'm out of here, Naruto said with a sigh before flying out the same window that Anko left. As she flew away she heard the Hokage shout, they invented the door for reason. Ichiraku's ramen, here I come. Naruto flew towards her favorite ramen stand. That evening Naruto was training in her normal training grounds that barely see any use anymore. She was doing handstand push-ups with one hand on the ground, the other behind her back while holding a boulder, easily twice as big as she was, with her right foot with her left foot stretched out to the side. 996, 997, she counted her repetitions, 998, 999, 1000. She then tossed the boulder, that is the size of her, to the side as she flipped back onto her feet and she brushed her hands against each other, 6 sets of 1000, nice light workout. Naruto then heard something fired a photon blast into a nearby treetop and it startled the nearby occupant enough to cause him to fall out of the tree. What are you doing here, Uchiha? Naruto asked in a stern voice, and where is your fans, Hitaki and Haruno? Sasuke grunted and said, like I need them watch my fiancé train. That got a tick mark from Naruto and she hit on the top of the head, I'm not your fiancé. She then let out a sigh and continued, you're already on thin ice Uchiha. You need to watch your attitude before you lose your shinobi license, or your life. Like anybody can defeat an Uchiha. Sasuke huffed as he got up only to be poked in the forehead by Naruto, causing him to land on his butt. Sure they can't, Naruto replied in an annoyed tone. She then turned around as she started to stretch her arms in a cooldown as she walked away and turned her head enough so she could see him out of the corner of her eye. Just so you know, your new sensei has a grudge against any official members of the Uchiha clan, so don't count on any special training like Hitaki was giving you. So you'll train me instead, as a favor to your future husband, was the Uchiha's response before he found himself kicked into a boulder just over 100 meters away from where he was standing, and Naruto's right eye is twitching as she lowered her leg down from her kick to the Uchiha. With a sigh, Naruto said to herself, "Why'd I even bother?" Before she flew off. She lost herself as was flying peacefully over the village, forgetting all her troubles, and the Uchiha. Kaboom! Startled, she looked towards the sound of the noise, which seemed to be coming from the southernmost part of the market district, and Naruto flew straight towards the rising smoke. What the hell happened? Naruto demanded, and she didn't have to wait long before a giant green something came jumping through the smoke, and it was easily 3 meters high and easily as wide in the chest, and each arm seemed thicker and longer than she, tall and wide. Hulk smash! The creature shouted. Thanks for watching. Also remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.